I always knew that. So when I'm on social, I have to think about, is this potential action going to take me closer to that or further away from that? And I'm thinking about my reputation and all of that. And because I work with the National Pain Advocacy Center, what I do reflects on other people at the organization. So I cannot just be out here any kind of way because everybody who is working at NPAC, we have worked for our whole lives to have this organization and to have the access and the influence that the organization has afforded us. So I can't hurt that for other people, and I certainly am not going to hurt it for myself. That said, it doesn't mean that I can't discuss something that's controversial or difficult, but I just have to do it in a way that's level-headed. It doesn't involve making an accusation of any kind. It doesn't involve escalation of any kind. To me, the point of being on social is to communicate helpful information for my Spoonie Chat community, because after all this time together and all the love and everything that we have built together, I want them to feel loved and accepted and well received. So anything I'm going to do anything I'm going to say has to be consistent with that.
Thank you. So this is a question that I was curious about. What are some ways that cultural norms make us vulnerable to exploitation and abuse in digital spaces and out in the world?
I think like a lot of times, like when you're disabled, a lot of us are part of a community, and people want to sometimes say, especially if we're doing things like mutual aid and fundraising money for things, people tend to want to say, hey, you're faking, like just being out there can make people make things up about you. I know that in the disability community, mutual aid is very important to us. Being open and transparent is also very important. And sometimes some people come in and will try to use that against us by saying, hey, you're saying you're disabled, you're saying you have all these health issues, you're lying. And that can open you up to harassment, online bullying, all sorts of things. But it's important to take a step back and recognize that you can curate your online space. You don't have to take the abuse.
Yeah, I think that's a good point. And, with the way that social media functions, but of course, Twitter is, has done kind of its own thing because it's open to everyone. Everyone can see what you say. And that's good and that's bad in a lot of ways. But one of the problems that I've had, and I really had to grow, outgrow this. There's a default setting that many women, particularly Black women, but any woman could be vulnerable to this. We're raised and formed from our earliest days to be helpful and to be of service, because the community is relying on certain things that we're going to provide. And that, I can understand certain aspects of that could be positive, but the problem I have is that it's almost just never considered that we should have something of our own that we don't share with other people, something, a space for ourselves, our own money, all of that. So there's this idea that we should just be so helpful and ready to help all the time. And also there is at least in North America, I see a default setting that women should not offend anyone. The classic example is a woman might stay in the elevator with someone who gives her a terrible feeling because she doesn't want to offend that person. And maybe that person could assault. So she has to work so hard to overcome her own instincts, but she's programmed to overcome her own instincts of self-preservation. So in social, a good version of that is that people will come and take content. Like they'll just come and rip big swaths of someone's content, and then they'll say, oh, I'm quoting you, or I'm this, or I'm that. And it's just like, no, I'm writing about my life. And for some disabled people, their lives and experiences, that's all they have. And someone will come and say, oh, I just want this because it's, you know, getting this information out there will help so many people. It's fine that you want to help people, but you have to ask if you're going to be taking someone's name and likeness and most intimate personal experiences, you know. But there have been so many times where people have come and taken my things, or even tried to take the name of my organization and you know, all of this stuff, and said, whenever I said no, they said, you're just holding back the movement. I'm not holding back anything. This is mine. Get your own.
No, it's a wonderful way to look at that. Um, Abby, you mentioned something um, about being being told you're faking. And could you talk, either of you, talk towards potential responses for being put on the spot or people asking for proof of an illness or disability?
Okay. So I've learned from experience that if anyone is asking you to prove yourself, prove your disability, it's better not to engage with that person. Because if anyone wants to engage in good faith, they would word it in a way where it is not accusatory. They would talk to you in the DMs because they recognize that, hey, this is the private information. This is your private medical information. You don't owe it to anyone except your doctor or medical, professionals at the time. So some stranger online isn't entitled to know what your health issues are, and you shouldn't have that feeling. You shouldn't feel like you have to prove yourself that you're disabled enough for them. Because a lot of times, there's nothing you can say to prove yourself. You end up wasting energy, precious energy, trying to prove yourself. And when you're disabled, energy is very important to protect. You need to be able to understand that, hey, I don't need all this validation to believe, to believe what I'm going through. Your body's best at the end of the day.
Right. Yeah. Dawn, anything to add?
Sure. I think it's important that we realize that a lot of times we're dealing with trolls, and it doesn't matter if this could be a member of your family, this could be someone that you like very much and that you have had a good relationship with, or what felt like a good relationship with in the past. Having a chronic illness or a disability is something that a lot of people cannot understand, or that they won't understand. And I think the fact that they won't understand is the important piece here. When we talk about chronic illness and disability and the way that it changes our lives and shortens our lives and all this stuff, a lot of people do not want to believe it. It's so disturbing that they just can't do it. And they will do anything to avoid having to confront what may be their own deepest fear, or something that challenges their most deeply held beliefs, their theological beliefs, because they believe if you're pure enough and good enough, God will heal you or won't let anything bad happen to you. Your political beliefs that if you work hard and make good choices, that nothing bad will happen in your life, or some other just perspective that is more important to them than their relationship with you. Now, this is not to be taken personally. I know it feels personal because we're talking about our bodies and our money and, our life chances and all of that, but it's about the person you're talking with much more than it's about you. And I can guarantee you, if you look through that person's timeline, you will find a lot of nonsense of one kind or another. Nonsense that they cling to like a lamprey eel. I mean, they just will not let it go. And it's not your job to go and pry the teeth off. Don't do it. Don't do it.
Fair enough. So, I think the final question that I have for us today is a look forward. And so, what's next in social media platforms and community spaces? And from your perspectives, what are people wanting to see to make life better for them?
I think it's important that a lot of like social media websites don't use AI or yeah, and like also I think it's important that it fosters a good like community. So it needs to have protections like being able to report things and having things that are terrible taken down. You need to be able to curate the space in a way where people are allowed to speak up about important issues, but those who are abusing the system or abusing people shouldn't be allowed in those spaces.
Yeah.
I think that's very, very important. I think also we want to make it easy for people to communicate with each other. So it's important there's like accessibility, features in there, so everyone can communicate with each other in a way that's fair. So privacy, safety, accessibility. It should also be fun and easy to use. Because if it's not easy to use, there's no point in using it. It just becomes a pain. So I'm hoping that someday reach a point where we have social media that can foster like communities better and where people can feel safe and can be themselves, but also that does not allow like bigots and other hateful people to be in those spaces.
Oh my gosh, that's amazing. um, Definitely a case of what they said, but also I I believe that we are headed, well, we are already experiencing fracture, and we are headed for even more fracture of communities that were big and cohesive. Many of them are going to come apart in some other pieces. And in some ways, it's like we're going back in time. I always joke that I want to go back to like the Shondaland high water mark when all those live tweets were going. That was like the most fun I ever had with all my friends, like making all these snarky comments and all this stuff. It was beautiful, but it couldn't last, right? Like nothing lasts forever. So we're in some ways going back to what we were dealing with in the earlier 2000s when people were going to specific websites and having smaller, more tightly connected communities. But instead of going quite like that, I would say that it's going to be raining newsletters and communities built around newsletters. And in some ways, even though I miss certain things and certain people in certain places, I think it's time to get a little bit smaller and for the creators to be able to build equity through some type of compensation and through parlaying these communities into bigger opportunities for themselves and something that they can give back to that community. So I think the new big is small, or small is the new big, whatever you want to say.
Well, thank you both for an amazing conversation about self-care, chronic disability, and digital spaces. I hope that you stick around to enjoy the rest of the conference with us.
Thank you.
Thank you.